Now, for Isabelle, we have another Ladybird book. It's classic stories, and it's called Ned the Lonely Donkey. I think this one might be quite long. Ned the Lonely Donkey. Ned the little grey donkey had lived all alone on his hill for as long as he could remember. He had lived there among the furze bushes and near the little hurrying stream in summer and winter, and in sunshine and in rain. That is Benji making those sound effects. He doesn't quite sound like a donkey, but he's giving it a go. Thank you, Benji. One sunny afternoon he had run races with his shadow and jumped the stream over and over again. He felt tired and thirsty. He took a long cool drink of water and lay down on the short springy grass. He got up and went to look for a sheep. There were a few of them on the hill, and they were generally too busy eating to have a talk. At last he found one. "Are you lonely?" he asked. "Lonely," said the sheep, lifting her head from the grass. "Lonely? I have never time to think about it. Are you?" "Yes, I think I am," said Ned. "I'd like to have someone to talk to and play with." "No time for things like that," said the sheep. "Eating grass takes all my time." And she went on eating grass as if she couldn't get enough of it. Ned walked slowly away. "I don't want to eat all the time," he thought. "I like doing other things. Eating isn't everything." Just then he met a rabbit. "Wait a minute," he called. The rabbit stopped and turned around. "Benji." "Yes," she said. "What is it? I've got no time to spare." "Are you lonely?" asked Ned. "Lonely?" cried the rabbit. "Me lonely? I've a husband and 8 children. I can't be lonely with a family like that. I must go. The children will be getting into mischief, and my husband will soon be home." And away she went. Ned started to go back to the stream, and the thick furze bush kept the wind off, and the bush that kept the wind off him at night. He stopped suddenly, for he almost stepped on a peewit sitting on her nest. "Oh dear," he began. "I hope—" "No, you didn't hurt me," said the peewit. "You really should look where you're going, you know." "Yes," agreed Ned. "I'm afraid I was thinking." "About what?" asked the peewit. "Benji!" Honestly, I mean, he could at least try and do a donkey sound. "I've decided I'm lonely," the little donkey said, "and I'm wondering what I can do about it." The peewit put her head to one side and looked at him with her bright eyes. "Go and ask the wise owl in the dark wood," she said. That evening, Ned trotted by the light of the moon to look for the wise owl. Now that's Lucy now who's contributing. It's very helpful of her. There were queer noises in the wood, and frightening shadows made him jump. "Lucy!" But he went on until he was in the thickest part of it. Then he stopped and listened. "Woohoo!" he heard. "Woohoo!" Then Ned slowly and carefully went through the trees and the tangled bushes, and at last he saw the wise owl sitting on a branch of a large oak tree. He was brown with large round eyes, and he really did look very wise. The owl looked at Ned and asked him what he wanted. "I've come to ask you for help," Ned said. "I live on the hill among the furze bushes and near a little stream. Sometimes I see a sheep, sometimes I see a rabbit, but they have no time to spare. I play by myself, I eat by myself, I sleep by myself. I am lonely. What can I do about it?" The owl stared at him, and then he shut his eyes for a moment. "The best thing to do," he said, "is to find someone else who is lonely. Because if you put 2 lonely people together, usually neither of them is lonely anymore." "Ooh, I see," said Ned as he nodded his head. "Thank you very much indeed." And he trotted away. Here's a wise old owl. Next morning, the grey donkey galloped down the hill to the farm in the valley. He looked in the fields for a little donkey like himself, but there wasn't one to be seen. He talked to some black and white cows. "I thought there might be a lonely donkey here like me," he said. "I don't think you'll find any lonely here," answered one of the cows. There aren't so many of us, and they all moved away to a very green stretch of grass." Ned spoke to some pigs in the sty, but they only opened their sleepy eyes for a moment before shutting them again. There were two big brown horses harnessed to a plough in one of the fields. Ned asked them whether he'd be able to stay at the farm, but they thought not. You see, they told him, everybody here has something to do, and that may be why they never have time to think of being lonely. But a donkey, well, what can a donkey do? Oh, nothing special, I suppose, Ned said sadly. No, I can't think of anything I could do really well. I quite understand that I would still be lonely here. Oh, and he trotted away to the high road. Oh, bless Ned. Very soon he overtook an old man with a sack on his shoulder. Hello, little fellow, said the old man. You're just what I'm looking for. And he put a rope around Ned's neck and led him towards his cottage. I do believe I found somebody just as lonely as I am, thought Ned, and he felt very happy. The old man tied Ned to the gatepost and opened the door. His wife came to meet him, and so did his dog, and a white cat leapt onto his shoulder. Oh, it's a nice little dog, look. Not like our dog, Benji. Look what I found, the old man said to his wife. I think how useful he'll be. My sacks can go in a cart now. So Ned was put in a little shed where he had very little room. The old man was glad to have him, but he quite forgot to give him anything to eat. He can't be lonely, thought Ned. He has a wife and a cat and a dog, and I don't like being in here. He kicked hard on the shed door. When the old man came to see what he wanted, he pushed past him and galloped away down the road. After a little time, he reached the edge of a cliff and looked down at the sea. What a lot of water, he thought, and how blue it is. Then he saw the yellow sand and the children playing and paddling. It looks very pleasant, said Ned out loud, and a seagull overhearing him said, It is, you know. Ned was going to answer him when he suddenly forgot all about the sea and the sand and the seagull, for he'd seen a little group of donkeys just below. My goodness, those are donkeys like me, he said. Perhaps they'll let me stay with them and I'll never be lonely again. And he found a crooked little path and made his way down to the shore. But the donkeys laughed at him because he came from the country and knew nothing about seaside donkey's life. They told him he could give the next ride and see how he liked it. So a very fat, almost grown-up boy climbed onto his back and he started off. Oh, how heavy the boy was, and how hot and uncomfortable the sand was, so different from the cool grass on his hill. The other donkeys laughed when he got back, tired and out of breath. They told him he would never make a seaside donkey, and they turned their backs on him and talked amongst themselves. That wasn't very nice, was it? Ned turned away and went sadly up the cliff. I don't seem to be able to find anyone as lonely as I am, he thought. I'm going to ask the wise old owl to think of something else. So he trotted all the way back to the dark wood and listened for the wise owl. Woo, he heard. This time he found the owl sitting in a beech tree. They talked for a long time, but the owl couldn't think of anything else, and Ned slowly went back to his hill to live as he did before. Oh, poor Ned. That was lovely, Ned, didn't he? We love him. On the following morning, he ran races with his shadow and jumped the stream 2 or 3 times and then had a long drink. As he was resting on the cool grass, a magpie flew down and sat on a large stone nearby. I heard what you were saying to the wise old owl last night, it said. Did you? Replied Ned. I didn't see you. It was in the dark wood, the magpie said. I've been thinking about you. Will you come with me? I want to show you something. Well, can we trust the magpie, do we think? Ned got up and he and the magpie went down the hill and through the fields together. Ned trotted briskly and the magpie flew beside him. After a time they came to a road, and in the road there were some large iron gates. You must go through these, said the magpie. Through these? But where are you taking me? Asked Ned, feeling very puzzled. You'll soon see, was all the magpie said in reply. And they went up along the drive with flowering bushes on either side and green lawns beyond. And then as they went round the bend, they met a man wheeling a wheelbarrow. Ooh, what's going to happen here? Hey, you, he called out, taking hold of Ned's mane. Turn around and go out again, little donkey. You don't live here, you know. And he led Ned all the way back to the big gates. I don't like putting you out in the road, old chap, he said, but I expect you'll soon find your way home. And he led the little donkey through and closed the gates behind him. The magpie, who had flown into the tree where the gardener had appeared, now came down again. Oh gosh, I can't turn the pages. It's a bit of an art, this. Never mind, it said, I know another way in. He took Ned along the road for a little way, and then he told him to push his way through a gap in the hedge. When Ned had done this, They went through the bushes until the magpie said they were to stop. Look, it said, over there. Can you see him? Ned looked across a stretch of green grass and saw the gardener busily sweeping the path. That man, he said. Yes, I see him. He'll send us away again if he sees us. No, no, said the magpie, not the gardener. Look there in the middle of the lawn. Ned looked again, and he saw a little boy sitting on a garden chair. He was all alone. He sat quite still, staring in front of him. There were a few toys on the grass, but he had nothing in his hands. He looks lonely, Ned said to the magpie. He is lonely, said the magpie. His mother and father have been away for some time, and he's nobody to play with. He looks well looked after enough. He's well looked after, but he's lonely. That's why I brought you. Oh, said Ned, I see. Yes, of course, I see. And the next moment he was trotting across the lawn. The little boy, whose name was Timothy, jumped up and stared. Then he ran forward and put his arms around Ned's neck, hugging him. Oh, he cried, have you come to play with me? Have you come to live with me? Can I ride on your back? He climbed onto Ned's back and held firmly onto his mane, and Ned trotted around the lawn with the magpie watching from a tree close by. Then the gardener saw them, threw down his broom and hurried towards them. Oh no, is that gardener going to send him away again? Hey, what's happening here? He cried, taking hold of Timothy's arm as he might fall off Ned's back. Whose donkey is this? I've just put him outside the gates. He's going to be mine, said Timothy excitedly. Come along, let's make a stable for him. But someone will claim him. He's not really yours, you know, the gardener said, looking worried and rubbing his chin. I'll keep him until somebody does, he said, and I hope no one will. I want him for my very own. Come and see about a stable, will you? Well, I suppose if I must, said the gardener, shaking his head but smiling all the same. The little donkey was taken to a comfortable shed at the other end of the garden, and the magpie flew away, calling out that he would soon see Ned again. Timothy and the gardener worked very hard, and they put hay and water ready for Ned and clean straw on the floor. After Ned had a rest, Timothy climbed on his back and they went slowly round the garden. Something was happening to Ned, and he fully understood what it was. The wise owl was right, he said to himself. I'm not lonely anymore, and I don't think Timothy is either. And those horses were right as well about doing things. The old aunt who was looking after Timothy made rather a fuss and was sure that Ned belonged to someone, but at last she said they would try and find out and he could stay until she'd done so. Ned thought that was very funny. As if I ever belonged to anyone, he said to himself. I've always been alone. But now he wasn't alone anymore, for he and Timothy were always together, and Ned grew fatter and Timothy grew rosier, and Timothy had another surprise. One day he was running races with Ned when a car slowly drove up the drive and stopped. Timothy could hardly believe his eyes when his mother and father got out. He and Ned ran as fast as they could, and the next moment there was a muddle of 3 people and a small grey donkey, all hugging one another. After Timothy had explained all about Ned, his father said that if nobody claimed the little donkey, Timothy could certainly keep him. So Ned lived with Timothy, and one day he went to the edge of the dark wood with the boy on his back. The wise owl saw him coming and flew to a tree close by. Not lonely any more, are you? No, thank you, answered Ned. Not any more, and neither is Timothy. Thank you for helping me. Very often when the nights were long and Timothy was in bed, Ned would lie on the grass talking to the magpie in the tree above him. The magpie would tell Ned about the hill and the furze bushes and the hurrying stream, and Ned would tell him all about Timothy. The end. Oh, that's a lovely story. Now, don't get any ideas about getting a donkey now, because you'd never be able to keep it in your garden. Okay? Thank you.